Good morning, guys. Again, we're going to be in Genesis 50 this morning. We're closing out our series through Genesis that we've been in for the past 6 months. So you guys can flip there to Genesis 50. Super excited about being in here. We've got new carpet in the sanctuary. Again, recognize the building is not the church. We are the church. But this is just a step in helping to create a place that is home, particularly as we're thinking about military members and their families, many of which you are. We just want to be a place where you can come home, not to slight military housing or anything, but I've heard a few things. And so we just want to create a nice, clean, welcoming space that you can call home while you guys are here. So again, we're going to be in Genesis 50 this morning, particularly verses 15 through the end, verses 15 through 26. I'll be reading out of the CSB this morning. It reads, "When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said to one another, 'If Joseph is holding a grudge against us, he will certainly repay us for all the suffering we caused him.' And so they sent this message to Joseph. 'Before he died, your father gave a command. Say this to Joseph, please forgive your brother's transgression and their sin, the suffering they caused you. Therefore, please forgive the transgression of the servants of the God of your father.' Joseph wept when their message came to him. His brothers also came to him, bowed down before him, and said, 'We are your slaves.' But Joseph said to them, 'Don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You planned evil against me. God planned it for good to bring about the present result, the survival of many people. Therefore, don't be afraid. I will take care of you and your children.' And he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. And Joseph and his father's family remained in Egypt. Joseph lived 110 years. He saw Ephraim's sons to the third generation. The sons of Manasseh's son Machir were recognized by Joseph. Joseph said to his brothers, 'I'm about to die, but God will certainly come to your aid and bring you up from this land to the land he swore to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.' So Joseph made the sons of Israel take an oath. 'When, not if, when God comes to your aid, you are to carry my bones up from here.' Joseph died at the age of 110. They embalmed him and placed him in a coffin in Egypt. Lord, again, we come humbly to you this morning. Lord, knowing that you love us, Lord, knowing that in your word there is life. So, Lord, we ask that you would speak to us. Show us ourselves clearly. Show us you clearly. Lord, help us to rest in who you are this morning. Lord, we love you. We praise you, and we ask these things in your Son's name. Amen. On December 11th, 2008, the largest Ponzi scheme in history came crashing down. Federal authorities marched into the office of Bernie Madoff, who, when it was all said and done, would have defrauded investors out of a total of $170 billion. The story goes that Madoff knew things were going bad. The financial collapse of 2008 was causing investors to ask for returns that he did not have. At first, he tried to move money into different accounts and through different banks. He even reached out to old friends to see if he could borrow money. But by Thanksgiving of that year, Madoff knew that he was finished. There was nothing that he could do. He owed his investors, but he did not have the money to pay them. He was completely vulnerable, and he knew that exposure was coming soon. So he started to work on paying his relatives and paying his favorite investors because he knew there was nothing that he could do. He was done. And soon enough, after he told his sons of what was going on, the authorities came into his office, arrested him. He was finished. We're going to see a similar story today. There may not be any Ponzi schemes in the book of Genesis, but we'll see today something that's been familiar throughout the book of Genesis. We'll see the vulnerable state that the brothers are left in, that Joseph's brothers are left in, and we'll see the beauty of how God acts within our vulnerability. And so today's main idea is this, and there should be a slide for this, hopefully. Today's main idea is this: be open with God who seeks your flourishing. Be open with God who seeks your flourishing. So first, we'll see that sin causes self-preservation. Sin causes self-preservation. Much like Bernie Madoff, our section opens with the brothers recognizing that they're in an incredibly vulnerable position. Jacob's just died, and their minds start to race. I mean, you can imagine the thoughts that are running through. What if Joseph has been holding out on us all this time just because he loved Dad? What if he was just holding back? He really didn't forgive us, and now he's about to unleash wrath onto us. You see, it may be years upon years after the fact, but the sin of casting Joseph into slavery has left them in a vulnerable state. They feel exposed. They feel unprotected. I mean, they're defenseless. And no one likes to feel that way, right? There's a reason that it's a nightmare to dream about being in your underwear in public, right? No one likes to be exposed or vulnerable. And Joseph's brothers certainly don't like it, right? In their minds, there are real consequences to the sin that they committed in their vulnerable state now. Right? They say if Joseph is holding a grudge against us, he will certainly repay us for all the suffering we caused him. Consequences are coming. So what do? Well, they do what all sinful people do. They go into self-preservation mode. And particularly at first, that takes the form of trying to cover up the problem. Protecting themselves takes the form of trying to cover up the problem. That's what's going on in verses 16 and 17. Right, they send a message to Joseph saying that Jacob has told them to forgive them for all their sin. Now, we don't really know if Jacob actually said this or not. Right, there's speculation on both sides of the aisle. But in all honesty, it doesn't really matter whether Jacob said it or not. What matters is the fact that they felt that they needed to say this at all. You see, by saying this, by saying, hey, Dad told you, or Dad told us to tell you that you need to forgive us. By saying that, the brothers did not directly own their sin. If they were really trying to own their sin in this particular situation, they would have come to Joseph directly. They would have asked for forgiveness face to face. But they didn't do that. Instead, they used their dad as a sort of cover, as a sort of way to avoid the situation. I said, hey, don't look at us. Look at Dad. Dad's the one that said to do this. Dad said you have to forgive us. I mean, even how they tell Joseph shows us that they weren't really owning it, right? They have a message sent to them. They're physically keeping their distance from Joseph. Their sin has left them vulnerable, and their first response is to protect themselves. It's to self-preserve. Right? They're not interested in actually owning the problem. They're just not interested in not facing the consequences. And their first means of preservation is to cover up the problem. And that's been a pattern all throughout Genesis. I mean, right after Adam and Eve eat from the fruit of the tree, what do? They immediately make clothes out of fig leaves. They literally cover up. When God confronts Cain after Cain murdered Abel, what does Cain say to God? He says, am I my brother's keeper? Right? He's covering up the situation by just trying to avoid it altogether. And what does Abraham do after Abimelech confronts him about saying that Sarah was his sister? He tries to get by on a technicality. Well, she actually is my sister. Right? Again, it's covering up by avoiding the real problem. And again, Jacob, What does he do after he steals the birthright from Esau? He runs. Right? He covers up by running away. It is in our sinful nature to avoid having our sins exposed, or to at least avoid the consequences of them. And it's not just in the Bible. It's in our culture as well. For example, Dave Canales, who recently became the head coach of the Carolina Panthers, is a Christian. And a few years ago, while he was coaching another team, he released a book. In the book, he explains that he was a serial adulterer before he became a Christian. And it's essentially the point of the book. It's to show off how God completely and utterly changed his life. I recently heard a clip of a podcast of two guys on a sports podcast where they basically insinuated that they thought that Canales' wife made him write the book as a punishment for his actions. Right? Exposing your sin just doesn't make sense. Right? It's the state of the world to cover up our problems, to avoid them from being seen. We don't just see it in the Bible or see it in our culture. We also see it in ourselves. We put on a front, right? Hey, everything's fine. I'm doing well. Or maybe we hide the sin that we're struggling with, right? We don't want to talk about it. It seems awkward, or maybe shameful or embarrassing to share it with others. And so we just keep it to ourselves. Or maybe we rationalize with ourselves, right? We try to tell ourselves that we'll fix it before it really becomes a problem. Or maybe it's actually not that big of a problem to begin with. Or maybe we try to cover it up by distracting ourselves. We throw ourselves into social media or TV or into the busyness of work so that we don't have to face the potential consequences of our sin. It's a means of trying to preserve our life. It's almost like a coping mechanism. Now the brothers, they don't just stop at trying to cover up the problem, though. Look at verse 18. It says his brothers also came to him, bowed down before him, and said, "We are your slaves." Here we see the other means of self-preservation. That is when sin leaves us in a vulnerable position, we think that we can do something to bridge the gap. Right? Instead of thinking maybe that we need to cover up the problem, we think that there's something that we can do to make up for the problem. This is also a pattern throughout Genesis as well. All right, two examples are Abraham feels that God has forgotten his promise to give him a son, and so he sleeps with Hagar so that he can have a son on his own terms. And when Jacob returns home, he knows that God has promised to give him the land of Canaan. He knows that God has promised to protect him, and yet he sends a caravan before Esau because he feels that he needs to rely upon his own resources to appease Esau. And because of sin, it's human nature to, whether consciously or unconsciously, believe that there is something that we can do to fix the situation. All right, it was true then. It's probably even truer now. We live in the YouTube age, right? It's never been easier to fix a problem on your own. Not only that, but we live in a society where you can work your way out of a lot of problems. Right? Did you mess something up at work? You can work overtime for it. Did you make a mistake maybe at work or something like that? You can do extra PT. Did you break the law? You can do community service. Right, we've been set to think that there has got to be something that we can do to make up for our mistakes. There's got to be something that we can do to make up for our sin. And so when we recognize the consequences of our sin, and when we feel the vulnerability and feel the exposure that comes from sin, we naturally want to do something to fix the situation. And we all do it. I was struck by a question recently, as I oftentimes think, man, I don't struggle with this, right? Maybe I struggle more with covering up than I do with trying to fix the situation. But I was asked a question recently that made me realize I'm guilty of this as well. And that is, as God thinks of you right now, what is the look that you because of something that you're not doing, maybe? As you think of God's face, what is the look on his face? Now, don't get me wrong. Right? We have a responsibility to cultivate our relationship with God. Right? God has given us ways to know him intimately, and we should be doing all that we can to know God all the more. But the problem comes when we see these things as a diving board instead of as pool toys. Track with me just for a moment. All right, we can see things like maybe going to church or reading our Bibles or praying or being a good husband or wife or mom or dad or whatever that may look like. We can see those things as a means of jumping into the pool. Instead, they're more like pool toys. They're there to help us to fully, they're there to help us to fully enjoy our relationship with God. They're not the thing from which we start our relationship with God. Does that make sense? They're there to help us fully enjoy our relationship with God. They're not the thing from which we can start our relationship with God. And so the brothers try their best to solve the situation. Right? They do two things. First, they try to cover up the problem or avoid it. And then just for a good measure, they come to fix the problem by throwing themselves at the feet of Joseph and offering to be his slaves. But at the end of the day, are the brothers any better off? They're not. They are absolutely, totally, utterly helpless. Joseph is second in command of all of Egypt. All right, one snap of his fingers and the brothers are done. They could be sent to prison or killed. There's nothing that they can offer Joseph. There's nothing that they can do to cover up their sin. They're helplessly vulnerable. And church, this is our state before God. All right, sin has left us utterly exposed and helpless. Right, the feeling that you feel when you let your anger get the best of you and you snap, or the feeling that you feel when you looked at something for just a little too long, or the feeling that you feel when you get called out. Right, those are just snapshots of how we are before God. That guilt, that sense of vulnerability is a display of our condition. We may try to do all that we can to hide our sin or to make up for it, but we're just like the brothers. We're just like the brothers sold Joseph for a few gold coins. We sold God for a few fleeting treasures in this life. And just like Joseph, God is in the position of power. We're completely vulnerable. We're completely defenseless. But we see, though, the story does not end there. We see second in this passage that God preserves his people. Look at how Joseph reacts to the message from his brothers. It's at the end of verse 17. He weeps. Or you can imagine him hearing the message and tears beginning to well up in his eyes, slowly dripping down. It's reminiscent of Jesus weeping over Jerusalem in Luke 19 as he cries over the hardness of their hearts. Or in Mark 3 as he's grieved at the hardness of the Pharisees' hearts. Or Joseph is overcome with emotion. It doesn't exactly say why, but we can infer that it's over their feeble attempt to cover themselves, based on what he says to the brothers when they approach him. Here, in Joseph, we see the heart of God towards his people. God is not shaking his head over our feeble attempts, asking us to do more. He's not dangling the carrot in front of us, asking us to take one more step. He's not the dad who's never satisfied. He does not require us to clean ourselves up. He doesn't require us to just do better. Instead, he grieves over our feeble attempts to cover up our sin. But he doesn't just stop there. He doesn't just grieve. Instead, what does Joseph say next? He says, "You planned evil against me, but God planned it for good to bring about the present results, the survival of many people." We see here that God doesn't just grieve, but that he acts. He works within our sinful messes to bring about our good. We can never be successful at preserving our own life, but God can. This has also been a pattern all throughout Genesis. When Adam and Eve sewed fig leaves, God stepped in to cover them with animal skins. When Cain killed Abel, God gave Adam and Eve another son, Seth. When Abraham gave up Sarah to protect himself, God rescued Sarah and spared Abraham. And when Jacob approached Esau, God had already worked within the situation so that Esau was glad to see Jacob. And when Abraham tried to have a kid in his own way, God still provided by giving him Isaac. Right? It's God's very nature to bring about life from death. Joseph is a foreshadow of Jesus, and as Joseph being sold into slavery brought about the good of his family, Jesus submitting himself to death brought about our life. God has always worked within the chaos of the world to bring people to himself. And here's where we find the beauty of the Christian faith. It's a sort of paradox, if you will. What does Joseph say to the brothers after that? Does he say that they need to become his servants? Does he tell them that they're good for now, but to do better next time? Not at all. He says, therefore, don't be afraid. I will take care of you and your children. And he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. In their attempt at self-preservation, the brothers were actually giving up any true experience in life. And yet, when they were left totally and utterly defenseless before Joseph, how did Joseph respond? With an affirmation to not be afraid, but that they would be cared for because God was at work. We find here that our feeble attempts to cover up our sin or to make up our sin aren't successful in preserving life. In fact, they take away any true experience of life. But it is in accepting, for the brothers, it was in accepting their vulnerability before Joseph and embracing forgiveness that he offered them that the brothers could truly experience life as it's meant to be lived. Now, this is the paradox of the Christian life. True life is found in embracing your vulnerability. Because this is not just Joseph's response to the brother's sin. It's a picture of God's response to our sin as well. Hebrews 5 tells us that Jesus is able to deal gently with those who are ignorant and are going astray. 2 Corinthians 1 tells us that God the Father is the Father of mercies and the God of all comfort. Hebrews 4 tells us that Jesus is able to sympathize with our weaknesses. In Hosea, we find God saying, how can I give up on you, Israel? Because he is stirred with compassion for them. Know this morning, that God loves you. God can comfort you. God can give you real, true life. And so, church, my encouragement to you today is to stop trying to cover up. It's to stop working to avoid exposure. Stop trying to earn God's love. In doing so, you actually give up the ability to truly experience life as it's meant to be experienced. Instead, embrace your vulnerability before God. Be open with God, not trying to hide anything from him. Be open with each other. And then embrace his comfort, his care, and his kind words. As he calls you his child and declares you innocent, believe him as he says so. Or when he says that he loves you and is working for you, believe him. Life is not found by making ourselves look better, but by embracing the mess that we are and the comforter that God is. Now, it might seem that the sermon should end there. All right, it's a nice bow on top, and the final verses of Genesis are just about Joseph dying. But there's something that we need to see in those final verses. And that is, God doesn't just stop at the preservation of his people. He doesn't just stop at the preservation of life. Instead, God moves beyond preservation to flourishing. How do we see that? Well, take a look at verse 24. Joseph said to his brothers, I'm about to die, but God will certainly come to your aid and bring you up from this land to the land he swore to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so Joseph made the sons of Israel take an oath. When God comes to your aid, you are to carry my bones up from here. You see what's happening here? If God is just interested in the mere preservation of life, right, he would just leave them in Egypt. Right? He's accomplished what needs to be accomplished. But God's not just interested in that. Right? Instead, he preserves their life for a purpose. That is, he's going to fulfill his purpose to them in giving them the land, fulfill his promise to give them the land of Canaan. This would be a place where they would flourish. He wants them to have a place that is home, a place that brings peace and security and stability, a place from which they can become a kingdom and experience the favor of God. God is fully interested in seeing his people flourish beyond anything that they can imagine. And again, this has been a pattern all throughout Genesis. Right? Even as he covered Adam and Eve in animal skins, he promised that he would crush the serpent's head. And then he went on to give them more life and more kids. Abraham somehow left Egypt after he lied to Pharaoh. He left Egypt with more than he came with. God gave Jacob the land of Canaan and sons upon sons, and then went above and beyond that in reuniting him with Joseph. Right? It is God's MO to give his people more than they need to have them flourish. Right? He's done it with us, as he's given us the Holy Spirit who gives us the ability to know God and equips us with the mind and heart of God. It is through the Spirit that we can experience the intimacy with God and life in God that he intends for us to live. And he has given us his word, which is the means of knowing him and experiencing his intimacy. He's given us each other as we are the kaleidoscope of God, if you will, as each of us points to God in our own unique way. He's given us all of creation as we get to enjoy it, as it shows us who God is. Right, this is God's world, and he fully intends for us to thrive in it. Church, this means everything for us. This shapes our entire outlook on life. We're not employees who need to pay our dues to stay in good graces with our boss. Instead, we're children of a wealthy, noble Father who gives us the ability to fully experience the world without fear that we'll be fired. And so his commands are not meant to be a weight on our backs, but are guides from a good and wise Father who knows the path to true life. And so we've seen today that vulnerability before God seems to be a terrible thing at first. And it's our natural reaction to try and cover ourselves up. But we see that vulnerability is actually the path to experiencing the life that we craved all along. And so church, as we come to a close today and a close to the book of Genesis, my hope this morning is that you know that God is worth your vulnerability. You may feel fear at exposure. You may naturally feel the need to put on a front or dumb down what you actually struggle with. But we've seen over and over in Genesis that God is a faithful God who wants to do good for his people. He sought out Adam and Eve and promised them that he would undo their wrong. He sought out Noah and protected him through the chaos and storms. He sought out Abraham, and even though Abraham tried to falter and go in his own direction, God was always gracious in his correction of Abraham and constantly gave him new things. We saw the mess of a life that Jacob lived, and yet God continued to provide, even as Jacob continued to mess up along the way. And so know this morning that God is worth your vulnerability. He has proven time and time again to be a gracious God and to be a God who can give you everything that you need. You're not Bernie Madoff, right? Our debt may feel comparable, and yet God is not ready to knock down your door and carry you off to shame. Instead, as Joseph comforted his brothers and spoke kindly to them, God is there with open arms wanting to comfort you. And so today, as we go out into our lives, as Israel, who was reading this, was about to enter into the promised land, the call is to be open with God. To be open with the one who wants to give you true life. The one who seeks your flourishing. The one who can provide everything that you need for it. Let's pray. Lord, we are grateful for your word this morning. Lord, we ask that you would help us to be vulnerable with you. Lord, to be vulnerable with one another. Lord, it is hard for us to be vulnerable. We live in a culture of self-sufficiency. Lord, we live in a culture where we think we can do whatever we need to make it big or to make up for our mistakes. And Lord, I pray that you would help us to realize that there's nothing that we can do, that you've done everything. Lord, help us to open ourselves up to you, Lord, to open up ourselves to each other, Lord, and to experience the beauty of your gospel. Lord, that we are more flawed than we could ever dare imagine, and yet more loved than we could ever dare hope. Lord, I pray that you would help us this morning.